Now, I'll never remember the morning we went to the exchange. I woke up in the morning and I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw the stock was trading from the night before, and I looked at the stock price, the number of shares I had, and I went, shit, I'm fucking rich. It never hit me till then. And when I talk to entrepreneurs today, it's always the same. They always say the same thing. They say, I didn't think about the money. It's sort of like the journey you're starting now in some ways, and maybe tell you about some of the mistakes I made, which would be in some ways more valuable than just talking about success, because I wouldn't want you to make those again. And I actually feel that way about any entrepreneur that's had success, that they would pass forward a path of least resistance, so to speak, maybe give you some ideas on what not to do. Here it is. I had enrolled in a night class with a computer called an Osborne computer. It was the first portable computer ever made. It was a CPM operating system. And I met this guy named John Freeman. John had designed a program that drove Hewlett-Packard plotters. Now, when you're in television, you're always making all these graphics. It's very expensive, very time-consuming. Titles. We'd have to get them printed, and there wasn't any, digitized technology at that point. But John learned how to take a multi-pen Hewlett-Packard plotter, which was an XY axis pen driven by a computer, and do graphics for a giant oil company he worked with. He was an executive there. And he showed it to me at the, and this is right after we'd sold special event television. And I looked at it and said, John, every guy that buys a plotter from Hewlett-Packard is going to want one of these software packages. Let's form a partnership. And I'll market this stuff and you'll write the code, and I will fly all around the world and convince the plotter companies to bundle that software with their plotters. He said, wow, but I can't give up my job. I got a family, I got kids. I said, look, you write code all night and weekends. I don't have a job. I just sold my company. And I remember sitting on the red chair in my living room. We were trying to name the company, and we called it SoftKey, S-O-F-T-K-E-Y. SoftKey Software Products. John and I, that was the beginning of a journey. John writes the code, we package it up. Our first product was called KeyChart. Every product we made had the key in front of it, because we really grew the business. But I flew down to San Diego, where a woman named Mary Zoller was running the plotter division, and I put on a show. I said, Mary, you gotta bundle this. I'll do it for $12 a unit. She just laughed at me. At least she was honest. She said, Kevin, I'm the #1 plotter on earth. Everybody writes code for me. What do I need you for? Maybe you should talk to some of my competitors. And it was one of those bing, you know how your phone makes that bing when a message comes in? And that's exactly what I did. All the Japanese, all the German, everybody else that was trying to compete with Hewlett-Packard, the #1 plotter, I said, what if you bundled my software with it and you got free software? Maybe that's a competitive edge. And boy, did that work. We sold millions of copies of KeyChart, millions, bundled with all these different plotters that were on the market. And in the end, I think we were only getting 12 cents a copy, but we were making a ton of money. And we just kept going and going and going. Now here's, I think, where my first million comes in. I started getting calls from everybody because it was the beginning of the dot-com era, and they wanted to invest in my company. And I called up John and said, John, what do you want to do, buddy? And he said, look, I'm just happy with graphics. You want to make this thing huge. Why don't you buy me out and you go on your journey? I said, I'm cool with it, John. And we just kept going. We did dozens of products. We went to a trade show called Comdex, and we just got bigger and bigger. A bunch of private equity guys invested in it. And then one day, a banker came to me and said, why don't we take SoftKey Software Products public? I said, why don't you work with the finance guys, put a deal together, and I'm happy to take it public. Now, I'll never remember the morning we went to the exchange. I woke up in the morning and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I saw the stock was trading from the night before, and I looked at the stock price, the number of shares I had, and I went, shit, I'm fucking rich. It never hit me till then. And when I talk to entrepreneurs today, it's always the same. They always say the same thing. They say, I didn't think about the money. My point is, it was never about the money. When I talk to entrepreneurs today that had the same experience from like their basement to that huge liquidity event, they don't even think about it. It's the journey. It's the passion for the business. That's what got them going. That's what got me going. That was my first $1 million. It was way more than $1 million, but the whole point, it was binary. It was like zero and then a lot. This whole entrepreneurial journey, most people I talk to, they have this unique moment in their lives when this happens. And for me, it was when I was in grade 11 in high school and I got my first job. And when I teach these days, I always tell this story, but I'll tell it to you now. I wanted that job because the girl I was interested in high school was working at the shoe store across the mall, and this was an ice cream store, and they were looking for a scooper. And so I took the job, and the first day I was there, the owner, was a woman, said to me, you know, when you give the little samples out of ice cream on little sticks, people take their gum out and they throw it on the floor, and this store had Mexican tiles, beautiful tiles, and the gum was, you know, got stuck on them and it turned dark, it looked ugly. Day was over, you know, I shut all the ice cream bins down, and I was ready to get back on my bike, go home, and she said to me, scrape the gum off the floor. You can't leave before you scrape the gum off the floor. And I said, well, and I knew that this girl was watching me from across the mall because we were going to check out and you know, go get a soda or something together. I was really looking forward to it. And I said to the owner, I can't, you hired me as a scooper. I'm not a scraper. I'm not going to get down on my knees because I didn't want her to, you know, the girl across the hall to see me on my knees scraping gum. And she said, no, you're an employee. You're going to do exactly what I say. This is Magoo's Ice Cream Parlor. This was Magoo's Ice Cream Parlor. It was right here. The counter was right here. And she said, you're fired. Get out of my ice cream store. But within minutes, I was on my bicycle on my way home in utter shame, in shock that she had that kind of control over my life. Changed my life forever. I have never, ever in my life worked for someone again. Ever. No one has ever had control over me, ever. And never will. And that's another one of those moments where the lights go off and I realized in life there's two types of people. There's the people that own the store, and there's the people that scrape the shit off the floor. And you kind of have to decide which one do you want to be. And I'm not dissing being an employee. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a different life. If you want that security, that's cool. And you can be a great employee, and I've talked about that before, but I didn't want to be an employee. I didn't want someone to have that kind of power over me. I never wanted that, ever again. And she was the reason. I owe her so much that she twisted me that day and I never had a job. I never had a full-time job again in my life. I only worked for myself from that day on. That was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey.
Sometimes being young and trying things, you're so naive and you don't know any better. All you do is learn. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. And so whether I was 9, 10, 12, 16, 21, the failures were irrelevant. And, whether you're, 9, 12, 16, 21, 22, 24, I'm sleeping on the couch, I have a car with a hole in the floorboard, I'm living like a bum and like a student. And so what did I have to lose? And so I think that influenced me as much as anything. So, it was, my dad was like, go for it, why not? What have you got to lose?
I've read your book, you have the 10, all these keys to success, etc. What would you say is the number one reason why people fail? Not necessarily why they make it, the complete opposite.
Right, lack of brains, lack of effort.
Lack of brains, lack of effort.
Yeah, they don't do work. They don't learn, when you walk in the room, when you start a business and you start to talk about somebody, you're never in a vacuum with no competition, unless you're just extremely lucky. And if there's going to be competition, that means somebody else knows your business as well as you do when you get started. And if you walk into a competitive environment and they still know more about the business than you do and more about your customers, you're going to lose. But most people don't consider that. They don't do the work. They don't learn more about their industry. They don't know even about their business. And so you've got to put in the effort to know more about your industry than anybody else. And that's the brains part, and that's the effort part as well. Because look, if you're competing with me, you better know what you're doing. Otherwise, I'm going to kick your ass. And you're not going to outwork me. And so, the combination is usually what kills businesses early on more than anything.